What's up, addicts? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. Today we're going to be talking the Week 6 risers and fallers and trade targets this week. Getting very close to the end of the season. Already got to start thinking about playoffs if you are in the hunt right now. Give you some names to think about as we go forward into Week 6. But hey, if you're new to the channel, just checking us out for the first time, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We post stuff about the XFL daily. We'll be posting stuff for the NFL soon. Free agency is about to start, so everything fantasy football related on this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Anyway, let's get right into the video. Alright guys, if you've been around, you know the drill by now. We go team by team, look at some of the biggest risers and fallers on each team, and then some players that I'm cautioning you to hold your value pretty steady on. So as we always do, we begin with the Dallas Renegades. Riser here, and a name that some people aren't bringing up yet, but a name that I am intrigued by. Eric Dungey, the quarterback there, listed as the quarterback behind Philip Nelson. They're saying that Landry Jones might only be out another week, but considering that he's a little bit older, I would expect that timetable to be closer to the 4-week window, so we could still have 2 or 3 more weeks without Landry Jones. Now, Philip Nelson has been playing really bad, guys. He's played 2 full games and almost an entire other quarter, and he's yet to score an offensive touchdown. His average yards per attempt is incredibly low. He doesn't have any deep downfield accuracy. I would not be surprised if they make a pivot to Eric Dungey soon, and I would be even more surprised if they don't do so this week. So definitely a name you want to jump on now. Dallas definitely has a high-powered offense, but Philip Nelson is not getting it done. Eric Dungey could do it for this team. We'll see if they make that move. In terms of fallers, obviously Philip Nelson is not someone that you want to be starting on your fantasy team anytime soon. Just doesn't look to be anywhere near good enough to be able to perform well in this league. Now, I have Cameron Artis-Payne and Lance Dunbar on the fallers as well, but not too drastically. They're still in the top tier of running backs. They're just not nearly as supreme as we were expecting them to be last week. We had them on our hold steady last week, but unfortunately, the quarterback play of Philip Nelson is bringing the value of this team down. Don't overreact though, because as I said, if they move to Eric Dungey, that could give this team a glimmer of hope, and Landry Jones will be back at some point, so this might actually be a good buy low moment for these running backs. Definitely going to continue holding steady on Donald Parham though. Still had 9 targets this week. If Philip Nelson could just throw the ball, Donald Parham would have had another fantastic week. He's still the most valuable tight end in the entire XFL and the most valuable player on this team. Alright, jumping over to DC. Jhurrell Pressley, the biggest riser this week, finally had a game where he had 15 carries, over 100 yards on the ground, and looked dominant and explosive the entire time doing so. St. Louis is not a crappy defense by any means, so he did this in a game where they desperately needed some kind of a spark. He was the spark. He was the player that really helped this team get that win, along with the defense that was playing well. Not too excited for this team overall. This offense still has a lot of bugs to figure out, but Jhurrell Pressley is the one shining star at the moment. Lots of fallers here. Cardale Jones got benched in the first quarter of the game against St. Louis BattleHawks. They're saying he's still the starter and should still start this week, but he has a lot of improvement to make quickly, or he's going to get benched completely going forward. He almost has no fantasy value at this point, which kind of sucks because Tyree Jackson doesn't really give you much fantasy value either. Unfortunately, Rashad Ross and Eli Rogers go along there with Cardale Jones. Tyree Jackson is not a deep downfield guy, and that is going to depress what these guys can do deep downfield. Rashad Ross especially, considering how much of a big play guy he is. Without Cardale Jones there to hit him on the deep ball, his value is quickly going down the toilet, but not completely down yet. Cardale Jones could still have a resurgence. I mean, as long as he can see that, all right, we have the ability to win. We're at home again this week. Hopefully they can turn things around. I'll give him one more week before we completely tank these guys, but definitely falling this week. Holding steady on Kari Lee, not bringing him up too much. He did get the fortunate touchdown with Tyree Jackson this week, but it isn't something that I expect to continue every single week. It's just tight ends are so tricky right now. You're still going to keep starting him because of the potential that he has to score touchdowns. Looking at the Houston Roughnecks, James Butler, of course, jumps up again after 2 touchdowns, still getting all the goal line carries, but Andre Williams as well, getting a boost in his value this week, should be rostered in deep enough bench leagues where you have James Butler as a nice handcuff there. Nick Hawley and Sam Mobley also rising this week. Nick Hawley, the primary slot receiver in Houston, and Sam Mobley taking over for Sammy Coates. Sammy Coates is our faller at this team this week. We really look at this team in terms of the run and shoot offense. We know that there's going to be weeks that these guys don't do much, and then other weeks where they explode. Cam Phillips seems to be the main constant in this offense. We'll have to play the matchups for the rest of the guys. Still holding steady on Khalil Lewis, only 3 catches this week, but he did have a target in the red zone. He almost came down with it. Would have been a much better day had he scored that touchdown. His day is coming, guys. We've seen Nick Hawley, Sam Mobley, Cam Phillips. They've all had terrific days here in Houston. Khalil Lewis is super talented. This day is coming for him, so hold steady on him. Buy him low if you can. On the Wildcats, Saeed Blacknell definitely sees a huge boost in his value, getting targeted deep down the field, often by the most accurate deep downfield target guy in Josh Johnson right now. They had a few plays that would have given Saeed Blacknell an even bigger game, but they were just not on the same page. The only downside to Blacknell is if Spruce comes back, it's going to lower the overall pie that goes around for this team. Don't expect the Wildcats to score 41 points every game, but overall you can't ignore what he's doing. Daquan Hampton also sees a boost in his value, although not playing tremendously well. He did get a touchdown this week, and one of our followers this week, Brandon Barnes, he did suffer what looked to be a somewhat severe knee injury in the game against Tampa on Sunday, so if Brandon Barnes misses any significant time, Daquan Hampton should see an uptick in volume. We're dropping all of the running backs rank here. I still like Martez Carter and DeJuan Harris the best here, but there really hasn't been any dominant running back play from this team. They've been very set on doing a 3 and even 4 back committee like we saw this last week. So until one guy can emerge consistently, it's going to be really hard to trust any of the running back options here. And then I'm going to hold steady on Nelson Spruce. I'm given the advice to wait one more week. I know we're heading to week 6. Playoffs start in week 9 for a lot of people, so we only have a couple more weeks of the regular season, 3 more weeks to be exact, before we start getting into playoff week. So if Nelson Spruce is still going to be around for the playoffs, you don't want to get rid of him yet. It'll also be a good time to buy him. All right, looking at the Guardians, Justin Stockton looked great again, averaging over 8 yards per carry right now. Hasn't seen too much work yet, but he should be the complementary back to Darius Victor. Tim Cook is basically the same guy as Darius Victor, so it doesn't make sense for them to use both of them in the same way. Justin Stockton is a true change of pace back and is involved in the passing game in PPR leagues, should be a sneaky flex play going forward. And then, both receivers here, Mikael McKay and Colby Pearson, see a decent boost in their value. They're becoming the true 1 and 2 options here for Luis Perez, who is able to give this team some consistency. Mikael McKay has yet to have his true breakout game, but it is coming. Colby Pearson with that 80-yard touchdown this last week definitely inflates his value a little bit, but he's still looking to be Perez's favorite target, so keep that in mind. No one really falling this week, and then hold steady on Jake Powell. If you're in a league where you have to start tight ends, he's still getting enough looks, especially near the red zone. He's going to have a good game eventually, so don't give up on him just yet. On the St. Louis Battlehawks, Christian Michael definitely rising here, almost to the same level as Matt Jones. He's getting about the same amount of carries, and honestly, he's looking almost as good. He hasn't had as many explosive runs, but it's almost become a 50-50 committee here pretty much over the past couple of weeks. I still like Matt Jones a little bit better, but Christian Michael has definitely seen his value go up over the course of the past couple of weeks as Matt Jones has dropped. LaDainian Washington looked really good on Sunday, and see his value go up, but might be someone that you might be able to quickly turn and sell. Jordan Ta'amu has now had 2 down weeks in terms of fantasy production, so he definitely takes a hit to his capital, but overall, if you have Jordan Ta'amu, there's really only 2 quarterbacks that you'd rather have over him. This league is dying for some better quarterbacks, so while he does see a hit to his stock, it's not going to hurt him too much. And then Keith Ford, we were hoping for an increase to his volume this week. 3 carries, 3 yards, not getting it done. So until Christian Michael or Matt Jones show either severe signs of slippage or suffer a more serious injury, Keith Ford is going to be more of a peripheral back that doesn't get much work. Holding steady on Matt Jones and Demarne Pearson-L, though. Matt Jones definitely had a good production day on the ground and should continue to get the goal line work. Hopefully Christian Michael doesn't steal too many goal line touches from him, so not moving him too much. And the Demarne Pearson-L, just an abysmal performance this week. He has better days ahead. The defenders have been really good at stopping the slot receiver outside of Austin Proehl in week 1. Should be a better day for him this next week, so don't give up on him just yet. Same thing for Marcus Lucas, pretty much the same as Jake Powell. He's still getting enough targets to warrant rostering him, so don't give up on him quite yet. All right, let's look at the Seattle Dragons. BJ Daniels sees another rise in his value, although he's still lacking some deep downfield accuracy, and he's probably not going to have any massive passing yards games anytime soon. He gets it done on the ground, which in fantasy football, for some reason, is still way more valuable than passing yards, so he's still going to be a top-tier quarterback as long as they continue to commit to him as the starter. He gives this team a much fresher feel on offense and should be the starter for the remainder of the season. So definitely worth having on your fantasy team. We saw a few fallers in this last week. Kenneth Farrow was looking to finally take a step forward as the main guy here, and then Trey Williams ends up getting the touchdown. So this continues to be a three-headed committee. Doesn't lose all of his value. I'd still rather have Farrow than Williams or Gardner, but Williams sees a little bit of a boost while Farrow drops a little bit. Keenan Reynolds has really only had one good game this entire year. The rest of the season, he hasn't really done much. He didn't get used too much this last week because he was technically the backup to BJ Daniels since Silvers was out. So that may have played a little bit in his role, but considering how low of a passing volume this team has right now with BJ Daniels there, I don't see Keenan Reynolds stepping back up to his former value anytime soon. And then again, all the tight ends here see a drop again. We thought that maybe Evan Rodriguez would finally take a step out and be the main guy here, but they're still spreading the ball around. Only one catch for each of the tight ends. Just nothing you want to mess with in fantasy. Hold steady on Austin Proehl. He looked good this week. He didn't get the touchdown that we were hoping for, but overall pretty solid performance, and still showing to be one of the favorite targets of BJ Daniels alongside Alonzo Moore. All right, let's get to the last team here, the Tampa Bay Vipers. Taylor Cornelius sees another boost to his value. He's looking really good out there. He's becoming more confident each week as the season goes on. While this team did lose because of mistakes towards the end of the game, it was still a pretty impressive performance from Tampa Bay on the road, traveling cross country to LA. So as Tampa continues to try to sneak their way into that second playoff spot, they're going to have to continue fighting very hard, and I think Taylor Cornelius can get it done for this team. Jalen Tolliver and Reese Horn both had good days on Sunday. Can't ignore what they're doing there. Looks like this team is moving more and more towards their 3 wide receiver sets without using their tight ends too much, which unfortunately means Nick Truesdale sees a little drop to his value. He could boost up again at any day, get it, given a big performance. It's not like you're dropping him. He just hasn't separated himself as the second best tight end as we expected from the beginning of the season. Donald Parham ended up, surprising everyone, but we still expected Nick Truesdale to be pretty valuable amongst tight ends, and really he's just kind of relegated himself to be one of the mixed group of tight ends in that tier that's far behind Donald Parham. And then I'll still hold steady on Devian Smith. Jacquez Patrick did leave the game on Sunday due to injury, and we don't know how severe that injury is quite yet. Devian Smith could be in line for a bigger workload. He still had a tremendous amount of carries, even though he didn't look quite as impressive this week. Eventually, he's going to get into the end zone. I know we've been saying that each week, but don't give up on him just yet. All right, let's jump into the buy low and sell high portion of this video. For those of you that are interested in making some trades, here are some guys that I would target this week. I mentioned it earlier, Cameron Artis-Payne. This might be a good time to try to buy him. He's coming off of 2 relatively down performances, especially this last week with Philip Nelson. Didn't really do too much against Houston. When he runs the ball, he's still running really hard. This team could change their philosophy a little bit with how Mummy's stepping down as OC this week due to that broken leg that he suffered on behalf of Cameron Artis-Payne running into him against the Roughnecks. So look for this team to look to deploy the running backs a bit more going forward, especially if they stick with Philip Nelson. They can't let him throw the ball as many times as they did. That's just not a recipe for success. So look for Cameron Artis-Payne to get some more usage beginning this week. Could be the last chance you get to buy him low. Devian Smith, same thing, after coming off of a lackluster performance where he failed to eclipse 10 fantasy points. This would definitely be a good week to go after him, especially if people don't know the extent of Jacques Patrick injury yet. If it does end up being severe, Devian Smith would see a massive boost to his value, being the main running back on that team. Tareen Folston isn't threatening to steal his work anytime soon, so Devian Smith should be a heavy trade target for you this week. And then Martez Carter, I still believe in. He definitely saw a drop to his value, but that's why we're talking about buying low. You should be able to get him for pennies this week, and I think of every running back on LA, he still stands the best chance to actually have league-winning value towards the end of the season. So if you have someone that, like, if you have a spot amongst like wide receivers, you have too much depth, throw a trade offer out there, try to see if you can pick up Martez Carter. Would be worth stashing for the playoff stretch. Jumping over to receivers, now I mentioned it before, but Nelson Spruce is a name that I would just put some feelers out there for, see if people are just holding on for dear life or if they're ready to let go after missing 2 games and really no new news. Just based on the way the XFL is right now, it's very hard to actually get any factual information about injuries, which is pretty frustrating because for all we know, Nelson Spruce could miss the rest of the season, but he could also be back this week. And the way that he played could not be ignored. The way Josh Johnson is playing, Nelson Spruce is coming back into a fantastic situation. So if you can get him now for pennies on the dollar, even if you don't get him for another couple weeks, if you have Nelson Spruce in the playoffs and you were able to pay 50 cents for him, you're going to be really thankful that you did that. So definitely one of the names you want to throw out there in trade targets this week. I feel like I've mentioned this guy's name every week, but Khalil Lewis's day is coming. Make sure you get him on your team before he blows up and you can never buy him again. Demorning Pearson L, after a terrible performance on Sunday, is a really good trade target this week. I still really like what St. Louis is doing. They had a down week this week going to DC, played against defense that just punched them in the mouth over and over again. They will rebound and look for Demorning Pearson L to get back to his productive ways. I'll throw Rashad Ross out there one more time. I know I said last week was my last week, but at this point you can probably get him the cheapest of everyone on this list. And there's still a chance that Cardale Jones figures out how to function this offense again. We see that their defense is getting back into the style of play that they had the first 2 weeks. So they're going to keep this team in games. Hopefully that will allow Cardale Jones to just calm down a little bit, stop making as many mistakes, and hit a few deep balls. If Rashad Ross goes off and you bought him low, you can always turn around and sell him high after an explosive game. So if you can get him thrown into a trade, probably not the worst idea. And then this might be a bit of an exaggeration, but if you can buy Donald Parham low after a lower performing week with Philip Nelson this last week, this might be your last chance to do so. Guy still had 9 targets, and if Philip Nelson could actually throw the ball, as I've said before, Donald Parham would have had another explosive week. By far the most valuable tight end, and if you play in a league where you start tight ends, has just tremendous value across the board. All right, let's jump over to the sell high section. Guys that not forcing you to get rid of, but just give you the scenario of where this might turn out to be a little bit of a gambler's fallacy to hang on to these guys. Jhurrell Pressley, while he definitely saw a boost to his value, if you could turn him into Jhurrell Pressley and someone else for like a Cameron Artis-Payne coming off of the big week, I think that would be a really good idea to do so. There's no guarantee that DC figures their offense out, and you can't expect their defense to play this well every single week, especially with a couple of tough matchups coming up. So Jhurrell Pressley's value could go back to where it was, or at least a little bit lower. So it might be a good idea to sell him while his name is hot. Colby Pearson, another name there that That 80-yard touchdown definitely inflated his value on the day. You can't expect that every week. Yes, he has been Luis Perez's favorite target, but I'm still expecting Mikael McKay to break out pretty soon, which might depress Colby Pearson's value in this low-volume pass offense. Jalen Tolliver and Reese Horn, the receivers for Tampa Bay, they've continued to kind of split back and forth. This was the first week that we saw both of them perform in the same game, but again, this was a barn burner game where they had to score a lot of points. Not expecting Tampa Bay's defense to give up 41 points every week, so don't expect these guys to come anywhere near that production on a weekly basis. Might be a good chance to flip those guys for a more dominant player on a better team that is not as expensive right now. And then I have one player listed on my buy high section. If you're in need of a quarterback and you can somehow convince the person with Josh Johnson to pry them away from him, each week Josh Johnson has become more and more in line with Philip Walker in terms of his fantasy production. He looked even better this week, even though his first throw was an interception. The rest of the game was glorious. He had a few plays that could have made his day even better, just missed a few deep balls to Trey McBride and Saeed Blacknell, but overall has been pushing the envelope. Their defense has given up a lot of points. Josh Johnson has had to score a lot of touchdowns every single week, so he really has entrenched himself as the number 2 option outside of Philip Walker, and it's probably going to come down to whoever has the best quarterbacks in your playoff structure. So if you don't have Philip Walker, you're going to want Josh Johnson going into your playoffs. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for today. We have a lot more information for you on our website at fantasyaddictionnetwork.com, so make sure you check that out. Hit that like and subscribe button for more news around the XFL and the NFL for fantasy purposes. Post daily here at the Fantasy Addiction Network. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.